Bournemouth University has over 16,000 students, 12,000 of these being full-time undergraduates. Some popular student roads are Ripon Road and Portland Road. Popular estate agents are Adams Lettings, Roberts, House & Son, Enfields and Orange Lettings.
So I think that's what needs to change. I think we need to raise the bar.
There's no reason for student housing to be treated any differently from any other housing.
Fundamentally, students pay a lot more than they should.
Student housing is a problem throughout the country, and we wanted to find out why this problem has not been resolved.
I think there's a range of properties in the Bournemouth area that suit a range of budgets, and I think as long as people are realistic about what they can afford to pay, then they should be able to find something within that budget for them. Some of the agencies charge higher administration fees than others, so you need to be aware of that.
£330 a month, I think.
£400 each a month, so it comes to £2,000.
When you compare the prices of accommodation in Bournemouth to places like London and Brighton, they're larger over there than they are here. But I do think I've seen some properties where it's not worth the money that students pay.
Yeah, many a problem. Our bathroom door keeps coming off the hinges at no moment's notice. We've got a lot of mould growing like here, there and everywhere, and curtains falling off.
At the beginning of the year, we created a survival guide to living in your first student house for all students moving into their first house. That included information, everything you could imagine. When your bin day is, how to vote in the council elections for your MPs, but most importantly it had information on things that you should do as soon as you get there.
I'm aware that some of the properties that are on the rental market in Bournemouth and elsewhere are substandard for what would be acceptable to people renting commercially. I used to represent a ward when I was on Southampton City Council, which was a very heavily student ward, and the condition of property was an enormous issue there.
No problems so far with the house. Like we've even been surprised by a certain few things. Like the landlord left the massive TV on the wall in the lounge for us, and a gardener came round and started gardening for us one day, and we were good. So yeah, we don't even have to worry about little things like that, which is nice. So yeah, there's been no problems as of yet.
We've got a leak in our ceiling at the moment as well, and they said, oh, it's just because it's heavy rain. It will sort itself out.
In short, it's effectively TripAdvisor for student housing. It allows students to sort of find their house as well as rank their agent and the landlord.
Sounds to me like an excellent idea. The old phrase "sunshine is the best disinfectant" is often true.
You're like, oh, that'd be a great idea, because then you could just pass it down and say, don't trust these guys, because essentially it'd be a blacklist for landlords rather than landlords having a blacklist for students. Exactly. So no, it's good.
Within 5 years, it'll be in most universities. Just from our sort of research and talking to people, it's definitely a sort of national issue. A lot of student housing has mould, which is often caused by poor heating or poor ventilation, security issues. Fundamentally, students pay a lot more than they should. Each student's paying £150 admin fee, which is just outrageous. So if you're going to submit a review, you come here. It's a really simple form. There's just 3 pages of it. So you do your name, your uni email. That's just to check you're a student, so you don't get estate agents doing it.
There can be problems with tenancy agreements that you might not find by yourself. Some of those are things that are worth worrying about more than others. Some of the clauses that are inserted into tenancy agreements might not actually be legally enforceable. So therefore it's unfair for you to sign that contract, and that might be something that voids the whole contract further down the line. The vast majority of tenancy agreements don't have any problem with them. They're quite standard. There might be clauses that are in there that don't apply to your house specifically, so there might be something in there about the garden and you haven't got a garden. That kind of stuff isn't really something to worry about. We also see clauses that are hard to define, so a clause might forbid tenants from engaging in acts that are illegal or immoral, but morality is a bit of a sliding scale, so it's hard to say what is and isn't immoral.
Overall, to be honest, I've had relatively good experiences with estate agents myself, but I only went with estate agents for 1 year of my university life, and that was in my final year. And by that point, I was already quite clued up as to what I expected from a house, and I also knew that there was a contract checking service in Subu. So I ran my contract through Subu Advice, who checked everything for me. So I think if I was a student coming here in my first year and not going into halls, I think that experience would have been really different. And I think we need to keep educating students on the different things they can do to ensure they get the right property.
We've had some students come to us who had put money down on a house next year, but because of the reviews they haven't, they've got out that contract, and now they're living somewhere that they know is going to be nice. So it's definitely made an impact on some students. It's just some students don't care.
We've had reports from students about the quality of service that they've received from letting agents. We run an annual housing survey that we try and push out on Facebook and out to students who come to see us. We work quite closely with Movem as well, a new website that's helping students review the quality of the property and the quality of the service they receive from their landlords and letting agents.
In my first year I lived in halls. That was fine, that was perfect, don't have to worry about bills. In my second year I went through a private landlord. So I didn't go through an estate agent, and the bills were through the roof. It was very difficult to get hold of him to help fix anything in the property. So it was cold. It was a cold year and expensive. And then my third year was fine. I went through estate agents, and after that, because I'm not a student anymore, I have found the renting experience very different as a non-student, and I've actually found it a lot easier. And I know what to expect, and I know how to deal with estate agents and landlords. Whereas I don't think that's the case for a lot of first year students. They trust everything they say, and they go by what they believe is the right thing to do based on what estate agents tell them.
Don't Rent Yet is about making sure that students have all the information they need before they move into a property. So it's not necessarily putting a time limit on when you should or shouldn't rent your house. It's just saying stop, don't rush ahead with it, make sure you've got all the information you need first.
We all often get complaints and concerns from students through our advice department, through our student reps, on the fact that they rushed into their tenancies, they didn't get their contracts checked, and they ended up in a property that was below the standards to what they were expecting and what they needed. And I think overall the campaign's actually had a great impact on preventing students from renting too early and actually putting it off until January, February, March time.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think we rushed into it because a lot of others rushed into it as well, and we didn't really look at a lot of houses. We just wanted to get one done. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I think it's quite good because I remember in our first year everyone was constantly talking about houses like the month before Christmas, and it was just, which would be just November I believe, and everyone was just panicking about not getting a house and run out of spaces.
I know the problem exists, but to some degree in my job you're driven by those who contact you and tell you there's a problem. The predominant contact around students comes from local residents who are complaining about mild antisocial behaviour, not from students who are telling me that they are living in substandard conditions and their landlords refusing reasonable requests to rectify it.
I think there's a fear that people will get bad houses if they leave it later.
We left this pretty late.
We left this really late. We got this in like April or something.
Yeah.
I think it would be good if there weren't any such thing as a student property market. If it was just a property market, there's no reason for student housing to be treated any differently from any other housing. Your rights and responsibilities are exactly the same as anybody else in a tenancy agreement.
People believe that student properties are meant to be below standard, and therefore they believe they can get away with having properties that are below standard. And then you get students who treat properties like they're below standards because they're below standards. And you have this cycle of bad properties, students behaving not necessarily in the best way in the local community. And I think we need to raise the bar on what student properties are like, so they're at a standard that students not only respect them, but students can actually live in them in a healthy way. Like mould and damp, it can actually have really bad impacts on students' well-being. So I think that's what needs to change. I think we need to raise the bar.
Okay, when the estate agent tells you that the house is going to go this week, it won't. And when they say if you don't put money down now, it will go, it won't. Like, estate agents are trying to sell these properties all year, and some only have sort of 10 properties. They'll let one a month or one every few weeks. They don't let them every day.
Check it out, have a look at it, see if there are things in it that you spot as potential problems. I think I'd probably also advise a student who was looking at a property to bring someone who had experience of renting in the private sector with them, who might have a better eye for what problems might be there before they sign the contract.
Look a lot more, take a bit more time and look at a few more houses before you jump into the first one you like.
Give yourself time to look for proper houses. Don't panic about everyone finding houses. You're going to find a nice house even if it's a little bit later than everyone else.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, even though it is nice to have a decent house, like it's really nice to have this one, it's who you live with, not where you are, kind of thing. Make sure you take the time to work out who you want to live with.
If it's through an estate agent or through a private landlord, come in and get your contract checked by Subaru Advice, because they will be able to identify any issues with it whatsoever, and ensure that if there are issues with damp or mould, then within your contract you can raise that and get that fixed as quickly as possible. And I think that's a lot of the root of the problem for students with their contracts.